Değerli konuklar, az evvel de bahsedildi aslında ama bu yıl ilginç bir şey oldu. Nobel Fizik ve Kimya Komiteleri bu yılki ödüllerle AI araştırmacılarını onurlandırmayı seçtiler. Yani yapay zeka atılımları aslında Nobel aldı. Önce Geoffrey Hinton ve John Hopfield Nobel Fizik Ödülünü aldılar ki Geoffrey Hinton derin öğrenmenin, yapay zekanın babası olarak bilinen bir isim. Yapay sinir ağları ve makinelerin öğrenmesini sağlayan temel algoritmalar üzerindeki çalışmaları nedeniyle bu ödülü aldılar ki bu çalışmalar zaten ChatGPT gibi büyük dil modellerinin de anahtarını oluşturdu. Hemen bir gün sonra Dömüs Hassabis, John Hamper ve David Baker bu yeni proteinlerin tahmin edilmesi ve geliştirilmesi konusundaki çığır açıcı çalışmaları aslında bir yapay zeka sistemi sayesinde kimya Nobel ödülünü aldılar. Bu biyolojide 50 yıldır çözülemeyen bir sorunmuş. Belli ki yapay zeka burada sorunun çözümünü hızlandırmış. Aslında bütün bunlar tarihte eşi benzeri görülmemiş bir dönemin tanığı olduğumuzun kanıtı. Yapay zeka yalnızca teknoloji dünyasında değil, artık toplumsal hayatta da derin izler yaratıyor. Bu yıl 2 dalda Nobel'i yapay zeka üzerinde çalışan bilim insanlarının alması, yapay zekanın bilimsel ve toplumsal etkisinin ne kadar aslında güçlü hale geldiğinin, yapay zekanın geleceği şekillendirme gücünün giderek daha fazla tanındığının bir kanıtı. Belki ekonomide, barışta, yine edebiyatta da kim bilir yapay zeka nedeniyle önümüzdeki yıllarda ödüller verilebilir. Belki bir gün bir AI Einstein çıkar, bizzat yapay zekaya Nobel ödülü verilir. Bütün bunları bilemiyoruz. Bildiğimiz yapay zekanın çok hızla bilimsel araştırmalarda vazgeçilmez bir araç haline geldiği ve bilimsel keşifleri daha önce hiç görmediğimiz bir oranda hızlandıracağı. Aslında Nobel Fizik Ödülünü alan Geoffrey Hinton, yapay zekanın gelişimiyle ilgili korkularını dile getiren bir isim. Hatta yaptığı işten pişman olduğunu söylemişti. Aynı koşullar altında yine aynısını yapardım ama bunun genel sonuçlarının sonunda kontrolü ele geçiren, bizden daha zeki sistemler olmasından endişe ediyorum demişti. Hinton'un uyarıları aslında yapay zekanın kontrolsüz gelişiminin potansiyel tehlikelerine dikkat çekiyor ve bu tarz endişeler ilk kez dillendirilmiyor ve tarihte aslında her yenilik ve her büyüme yeni endişeleri, sorunlarını beraberinde getirmiş. Yeni kıtalar keşfedildi, sömürgecilik doğdu. Fabrikalar kuruldu, olumsuz çalışma koşulları çıktı. Petrol bulundu, çevre kirlendi. Şimdi AI keşfedildi ama aslında bu yeni bir keşif değil, sonsuz bir kaşif deniliyor. Haliyle riskleri de farklı. Ve o kadar hızlı ilerliyor ki bizim riskleri var diye kafamızı çevireceğimiz bir noktada değiliz. Yani riskleri anlayıp sınırlar koyarak ilerlemeye çalışmanın yollarını aramamız gerekiyor. Zira faydası ve kolaylaştırıcı etkisi risklerinden belki de daha fazla olacak. Az evvel de gördük, iklim krizi, sağlık gibi konularda, eğitim konularında belki de ciddi çözümlere ihtiyacımız var ve yapay zeka bize yardımcı olacak. Önemli olan yapay zekanın potansiyelini sorumlu bir şekilde yönlendirmek. Bunun için de bu teknolojinin daha erişilebilir olması, daha geniş kitlelere ulaşması ve demokratikleşmesi çok çok önemli. Şimdi gelin bu tartışmaya yeni bir boyut getirmesi için iki değerli ismi takdim edelim. Pınar Kulacz ve Meta'dan Erika Finkle, LLM'lerin yani büyük dil modellerinin ve açık kaynak teknolojilerinin yapay zekayı nasıl güçlendirdiğine dair keyifli bir sohbet gerçekleştirecek. Alkışlarınızla Erika Finkle ve Pınar Kulacz geliyor sahneye.
Hi, everyone.
Hello there. Can you hear? Okay, wonderful. That's been a grand start, I suppose. You've heard a lot of numbers and intros and references to already what is real, and that is AI. And today, this is Pınar, and I have a wonderful guest, Erika. We met before, but I really would like you to get to meet her as well, because she's full of gems. And this is the concept of a fireside chat, so we're not going to go too serious, but we're going to talk about serious stuff. So that's our agreement up front. The topic, as you have heard, we're going to talk more about how we can democratize the use of AI, but that's not everything we're going to talk about, because Erika is the policy director from Meta, so she has in-depth experience in setting policies and to make sure we make use of these grand opportunities. I had other numbers to refer to, but I'm going to copy from the survey Halil just held. As we have seen that there is a grand opportunity lying there, that we even think, people in this room, we think that we can find cure for cancer and we can fix the climate crisis. So it means we have to talk about democratizing this enabler, which is AI. But Erika, with no further ado, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here. And I'm very happy I'm going to be the one asking questions, and you're going to do most of the talking. So let's get started. So we'd like to get to know you more. But I particularly want to know about your journey, because I have already heard that you've been doing AI before, so it's not first time. LLMs did not introduce AI to you. You've been in machine learning before. But I would like to understand how you got started in this space. What drew you into this space? What do you like about it? What excites you? And particularly, are there any pivotal moments in your career that shaped how you think about AI today? So, yeah, long question.
I'm not sure I'll get to all of it, but thank you all for having me here, and thank you for allowing me to be here and speaking in English. And at some point in the future, the AI will just take this and translate it for all of you in a seamless way, and that's probably not too far off. It's very, very exciting. I will forgive you all for putting Meta very low on that poll, but I will say it's a success anytime we come in ahead of Apple. So thank you for that. That was greatly appreciated. I'll tell the team we're at least succeeding there. It's not very often that we're more popular than Apple at anything. Anyways, thank you for having me to talk a little bit about my journey and being in the AI space. What drew me to AI, I think, was the start of that question. That's very much personal, so this will age me for some people in the room, and it will make me very, very young, probably, for other people. But I grew up without a computer in my home, and without, technology at hand other than calculators, probably, in school is the first thing that I'm thinking of. And, of course, we had TVs, radios, et cetera. But this sort of learning and informational technology was really limited to public service TV, I guess, at the time. And so seeing the transformation over a number of years throughout my youth and into my college years of going to homes with personal computers, homes coming online, and eventually devices, and then eventually devices that you could interact with, seeing the way that truly changed the way that humans interacted with each other, interacted with their technology. To this day, we all talk about putting down our phones or picking up our phones. In the future, we'll talk about maybe putting down our glasses and picking up our glasses. The human technology interaction and the way the technology changes human interactions has always been a thing, a passion of mine. And I think we're about to see that transformation with respect to AI. We're really on the verge of a new generation that will someday sit up here and say they remember the days before AI agents, which we heard a little bit about, and I can talk a little bit more about later on. So that's what brought me to AI. I have been working at Meta on machine learning over a number of years, and really seen a huge potential for it at a lot of the uses that don't get talked about. So at Meta, we automate a ton of our safety work. So we automate ways that we can detect abuse and safety violations across our services. And so I work on a lot of that. I've worked on a lot of that machine learning historically, ways to detect all sorts of sort of safety violations, ways to help protect folks of certain ages that are using services like teenagers. And then now, more recently, obviously, the development of generative AI and Meta's open source AI models, which I'm excited to talk more about. From a policy perspective, I can also say that it's really exciting to be working in AI from that perspective as well. I love working where there's no rules of the road yet. And so we are trying to determine, based on the science and the technology as it develops and a lot of research, what the best and most ethical course of action is. That's what I spend most of my time doing, is not talking to audiences, but working directly with engineers and product managers on exactly that.
Thank you so much. That gives me a great segue. I'm an engineer, so we're going to get along really well. So I think your segue towards large language models and generative AI makes me ask you this question. So as the topic of our session is more like democratizing AI. So the open source large language models versus proprietary models. So they're gaining momentum, right? Open source is gaining momentum. So more and more people are using it. As an engineer and as a curious engineer, I've been trying out different LLMs myself. So I've not built anything gigantic yet, but yeah, I'm playing around. So in your opinion, what are the biggest advantages and also risks of using open source over proprietary models? So that's the grand question, because this is more of the things. It's not fear of missing out, but fear of not knowing. So you get in there. So what are we getting in, really?
Yeah. I think most of you will know, but Meta's open source approach does set us apart from many of our peers that have proprietary systems. I think the biggest advantage of open source systems is something you've seen already in the presentations today. Innovation, economic growth, competition. Open source fosters all of those much more quickly and much more widely across the globe. So whether it comes to some of the scientific and health, what we would call use cases or purposes that have already been talked about today, or whether we're talking about business productivity, all of those are much more quickly and rapidly spread via open source. And then just to add some numbers, I know there's been a lot of statistics shared already on this, but JP Morgan Research had a number about annual GDP growth of up to 10%, or that would be $10 trillion from AI, potentially. So just the vast amount of ability for all sorts of populations, countries, and we can talk a little bit more about this in a second, because you mentioned democratizing AI, to be able to take our open source models and leverage them for their own specific use cases. So that brings me to another advantage, which is it's more customizable, right? So folks can download open source models to their own hardware, their own company's own hardware and infrastructure, and use it and customize it for a specific purpose that they choose, and that's free and available for them. Speaking of downloading to your own hardware, oftentimes data access might be an issue for a company where they don't want to, or a government or any sort of developer where they don't want to provide their data to another company in order to get the benefits of generative AI. So yet again, there, open source allows folks to use their own data on their own data systems, on their own hardware, or wherever they're already at, and leverage open source from that way. And then getting to the democratizing of AI point, I think the societal impact is really important here, and it's probably good to be very crisp around what we mean by democratizing AI. So more open models essentially allow developers and others to take and interrogate data, to interrogate the weights of the model, to really look into the design of the model, and essentially be able to then take that and adapt their models to their specific needs, but also provide feedback to us about things within our models, help us improve our models. And when we're talking about adapting to different uses, I think it's important to talk about different linguistic uses, different cultural uses. So really getting at the ability for folks to take Llama, our open source model, and adapt it to their languages, adapt it to their culture as needed. And so it's helping to empower a greater set and a more diverse community, including Turkish languages. And we can talk a bit more about that in a second. I want to be very clear, open source also benefits Meta as a company. Our business model is not selling access to AI, and therefore we can make our models freely open and available without any disruption to our revenue sources. So I do get a lot of questions, what's in it for Meta? And so we like to be really clear that it is in accordance with our business model, but we also think that a healthy ecosystem has both open and closed systems, and all are necessary and for a healthy developer ecosystem as well. You asked me about risks, and I'm here to sing all the benefits of open source. So I could try and answer this question without saying any risks, but that would be a little bit false. I think one of the biggest risks that's probably top of mind for most people are safety and security when it comes to open source AI. I see that as a risk, but also as a benefit of open source. So the notion that proprietary systems keep out bad actors, because usually when we're thinking about safety and security, we're thinking about misuse and bad actors. The notion that closed and proprietary systems will keep those folks out, oftentimes they find ways around. They can jailbreak. They can find ways around restrictions that are provided as a part of closed source systems. So bad actors may anyways be able to compromise any system. But what proprietary also might do is keep out a lot of trustworthy actors and create barriers for trustworthy actors. So white hats or other folks who will use our models and help us improve those models from a safety perspective. When they're freely and openly available, that kind of feedback loop from those using models is much more able to inform our safety perspective and help Meta to improve our models. So safety and security, I would say, is probably like a double-edged sword there. Open source is definitely more subject to stress testing and scrutiny by a wider set of people post-deployment. And so it can be a benefit to be open sourcing from a safety and security perspective as well.
All right, so just to summarize as an engineer, so I think the biggest benefit is having customization, and it also helps the ecosystem. And safety and security might be considered a risk, but it's risk across the board, so it's not a specific risk for the open source side. When you have the ecosystem can also take care of itself, so I think it creates some sort of immunity within the ecosystem when you have the white hats also taking part in developing the open source itself. I'm a great supporter of open source, so it was difficult for me to find risks as well. Thank you so much. I mean, I'm very mindful of time, so we have about 5 minutes to go. But I'd like to know more, because now we talk about democratizing AI. So if we managed already to democratize AI to a certain extent, and we heard some good cases from Halil's presentation as well. So what are some use cases you can share with us that you found really interesting, that wowed you, or that are really already generating pretty good value for the ecosystem, for the world, for the industries?
Yeah. So customer support is one area to highlight. So here, I think people think of like the chatbots of old with these sort of like formulaic responses that aren't very helpful to them. And those are quickly going away in favor of AI agents that are much more able to generate appropriate responses and help customers in their needs. And one example from here in Turkey, Trendyol, which I guess you all know better than I do as an e-commerce platform. So they've leveraged Llama, our open source model, to build essentially essentially an LLM of their own that speaks both Turkish and English and helps with customer support. You're going to hear later today from some of my colleagues, but we have a startup innovation program, Başlat LLM Impact Program, and it's in partnership with Turkey AI and Hello Tomorrow Turkey. And we have trained and mentored a number of different startups with Llama integration there. So really benefiting small, medium startup community from generative AI so far. I think there's a number of scientific use cases that have come out of that. One to highlight, Carbonets has been developing generative AI-based solutions to support green transformation processes and to help banks assess ESG value and sustainability within companies and help those companies assess it themselves as well. In terms of surprising and unexpected, I think the quick adoption within the public sector. I've worked within the public sector myself, can often move slow, particularly when it comes to technology. And in that sense, again, here in Turkey, DataMind has successfully worked with the Istanbul Metropolitan Municipality here to enhance their public services with generative AI. So I think that's probably one of the more surprising things where we're already seeing results within the public sector.
That's pretty amazing, seeing results in public sector. Thank you, Erika. And my last question, as you might expect, and as the audience might expect, is about policy.
Yeah.
So I'm a prior innovation director, so of course, I mean, I was breathing for innovation. I was sleeping and waking up for innovation. But you know, innovation and regulation do not marry well sometimes. So we just want to know, so how can still be, we want to be responsible, so we want to implement responsible AI, but also govern everything in a proper way. So how do you see the future in general? Like, what is Meta doing along the domain? How do you see the EU Act coming along? And I'm sure you have some comments about that and your views. And I mean, is there a sweet spot? Like, how can we make sure that innovation and regulation can, if they don't have to marry, but they can dance well at least, so there is not too much tension, but just enough tension to make sure we all do the right thing for our children?
Yeah. So first I want to start by there's no regulation in place that forces the hand of the responsibility work that we're doing at Meta right now. There's no one compliance requirement. There is, I work closely with our chief ethics officer, and we've built a generative AI responsibly because we know that there are certain ethical obligations we have both to the consumers that use our products and to society at large. Some of the ways that we build responsibly throughout our entire process of designing models, risk assessment processes, we do red teaming, a very extensive red teaming across our models. We evaluate them, and then we come back and do even more red teaming. It's a process I've been intimately involved with in a number of hours, as you can tell, from the way that I keep emphasizing it. And then we do safety fine-tuning as well. That's all pre-deployment. It's a very iterative process. We do it in a number of steps and continue back if we don't get the results we want. And then post-deployment, I already talked about a little bit in terms of getting a lot of input and feedback from folks using our models to make sure that the developer ecosystem is supporting us in safety, but also that we're supporting them. So there's a number of different ways that we support that ecosystem. We have LlamaGuard. It's a tool that folks can use for safety, for outputs to be in accordance with certain safety standards. We make it open source and available to everyone. We have a responsible use guide for developers so that they know how to use our AI, open source AI products, Llama, very safely. So all of that was without sort of any regulatory body saying, hey, you need to do this. That was how we developed our AI and released it out into the community. All that being said, you asked about the EU AI Act. I have to say that I'm a very big fan of the EU. I lived in London when it was a part of the EU, traveled around, lived in Spain for a little while, in the Netherlands. So I'm going to preface everything with, I think they have a really valuable AI strategy. They want to be, you know, a place for innovation in AI. And I do worry and I have concerns about sort of them also being a leader in tech regulation first out of the gate. So we've seen GDPR, we've seen the Digital Services Act, the Digital Markets Act, the EU AI Act now is the most recent one. And all of them well-intentioned, all of them very quick as we're still getting knowledge of this technology, as we're still understanding what it takes. There's no definition of safety within generative AI right now. There's no definition of exactly how to evaluate it. And so when you're in that kind of environment, it makes it very difficult to formulate policy around that. And I do worry, as you said, about the cost to innovation and the cost for EU companies. Some staggering statistics is that no EU companies are among the top 10 companies in the world. No EU companies are among the unicorn startups. So those are like startups worth and valued over $1 billion in the top dozen or so. There's no EU companies. Among the top 50 EU companies, none of them were started in the past 30 years. That's probably one of the more astonishing statistics to me. So you have to really closely look at the impact that the regulation is having for the companies as well and their ability to innovate. So I have the best of hopes, but I also, in the US, there's the concept of keeping up with the Joneses. I don't know if everybody knows it, so I'll just explain. It's like keeping up with your neighbors. Like, do you have as nice of a house as them? Is your garden as intricately set out as theirs? And the U.S., we're very concerned with keeping up and actually outpacing China. I worry about the keeping up with the Joneses of the EU when it comes to innovation. We still have to see how the EU AI Act and other things will impact innovation within the EU.
All right. So that brings me to the very end of our chat. I'm sorry it's so short, but I asked all the questions I was curious. And if you want to catch up, so probably in the break you can do that. I'm sure you have some more questions. Thank you for your time, Erika. And we'll continue our chat later.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Bu harika sohbet için çok teşekkür ediyoruz Sayın Pınar, Kose, Kulacz ve Erika Finkle'a.